Welcome back to the Underground Paradox, the U.G.P, and the search for truth with me, G. Revers. I've been researching and investigating the unexplained, ufology, cryptids, the paranormal for almost 3 decades. Across that time of researching and investigating, I have not seen or captured anything myself or had any experience until this year in 2024. Recently, the Underground Paradox did a collaboration with G-Star Vault. Vault is another YouTube channel that I upload content, and G-Star Vault is a studio-based program where I analyze content, footage, photos, and review paranormal evidence. The collaboration episode between U.G.P and G-Star Vault was so that I could share with you guys the 2 experiences that I've had in 2024. So grab a drink, get comfortable, and enjoy. Okay, so what is this episode about? Well, it is about a couple of sightings of whatever you want to call them these days, UAPs, UFOs. And these sightings, funny enough, come from yours truly.
What?
So the first one happened earlier this year, and then there's actually been a second one. Now, I have been an enthusiast of, ufology, certainly, for near on 30 years, and in that time I've always been watching the skies, and you'll have seen on some of my videos that I've done both here on the Vault and on the Underground Paradox that I've never seen anything other than my first experience that I had when I was 14. So I've been watching the skies for a very long time and never seen anything after that first experience until this year, and funny enough had 2 kind of experiences. Now, they are unexplained, and that's simply all I'm saying at this moment in time. So the way that we're going to do this is that the first experience, I tell you what, I'm not going to tell you the story. I'm going to pass you over to my good friend who's on location in Devon. And that's G. Redvers from the Underground Paradox. So let me just check. Have we got him? Are you there, G? Hi guys, and hi G Star. Nice to see you back in the vault doing what you do. Yeah, great, and great to see you on location as well, G. Yeah, cheers, mate. It's great to be back out on location. Right now, I'm here on Devon in an area called the South Hams. I'm going to share on a map with right now where exactly in the world that I am. And the reason why I'm here is because at this location on February the 1st of 2024, this year, a sighting took place. And that sighting was actually from myself. But the sad news is that I didn't get any pictures or video footage of that sighting, but I still want to come here and share this location and do a walkthrough of it in the hope that you guys might have some input or some ideas as to what it could have been, because for me it still sits in that category of unexplained. When I say unexplained, I'm not saying that I saw an alien ship. I'm saying that what I saw I can't easily explain. I've been paranormal investigating for quite some time, and therefore it's given me an ability to know of certain things that I can easily eliminate, and at the moment I can't come up with an explanation, but maybe you guys can help me. The sighting, how it took place, I was actually in my vehicle, in my car, and I was driving home from work. As I mentioned, it was on February the 1st of 2024, so it was winter here in the UK, and at that time of day it was pitch black. It was nighttime already, but obviously still early evening. I was driving home, and you're going to see, I'm going to share some footage. A lot of the drive, at the time I was working in a location called Salcombe and travelling to Plymouth. And the South Hams is primarily very much like what you see in the background behind me right now. Farmland, very agricultural, with some small fishing towns. The closest town to this location right here is a little town called Yelpton, and therefore it's a lot of thin country lanes. And when I was driving, the thing is, it would be quite dangerous of me to have stopped and grabbed my phone or my camera or something like that, because at night time on these country lanes they can get quite busy because there's a lot of traffic that goes through this area, as you might have already seen in the background there. But even though it's narrow country lanes, it's still a 60-mile-per-hour limit, and some people, do use that. It wasn't easy for me just to stop, pull over, grab my phone, grab my camera, whatever. There would have been a risk that somebody might have come around a corner at high speed and gone right into the back of me. And it all happened so fast. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a walkthrough during the daytime hours right now so that you can see much more of the environment. Because at the time I was confident that I know this environment quite well, and there wasn't any sort of buildings around or anything that could easily explain what it was that I saw. And then I'm going to do a walkthrough at night so that you kind of get to see what I was seeing. With that nighttime footage, I'm going to try and do some visual effects to kind of add in something that will be similar to what I saw to give you an idea. And what I want you guys to do is just, please comment and just let me know if you've got any thoughts or ideas on what it could have been that I saw. But let's start this walkthrough. So this is where it first started happening. Here's the road here. I'm driving along, and there was quite a significant amount of light emanating from that little bit of woodland that's just there, and we're going to cover that woodland a little bit more. And it was quite what I would describe it as. It was bright white light. So at first, as I'm driving, my initial thoughts are somebody's out walking their dog with a torch. You can hear in the background there's quite a lot of dogs at this location. Or it was somebody on a bike, but again, I knew that this was, again, this is just all farmland here. So the likelihood of it being somebody on a bike or a vehicle was very limited. The very first thing I want to do is explain why I've done this as a walkthrough and not filmed it in my vehicle, and it's for two reasons. The first reason is I've already explained that these country lanes, certainly at this time when I was filming in August, the roads are quite busy, there's traffic around. I couldn't go slow enough. I'd have to drive quite quickly through the area, probably wouldn't make the footage very good. Secondly, because it's August and the sighting took place in February, in the middle of winter, all these leaves that you see around in the wooded area in front of us, a lot of the hedges at the side of the road, all of that wasn't there. And what was indicative of the time of year is that the majority of the trees in the woodland were bare of leaves. Not all of them, but enough that I could see right into the woodland and through it as well, which you can't at this time of year. It's also important to note that why I'm showing you this walkthrough in the daylight hours first is because I want you to see the lay of the land, and the fact that a lot of things that I can eliminate, I can explain because there's no way that they would have been in this environment. You'll understand as we go through it. So what I'm going to do now is describe to you what I saw as I saw it, and also what I can remember to my best recollection of what I was thinking at the time, what was going through my head. And then later on I'm going to insert thoughts and conclusions that I've had through further investigation and that thought process. So here we go. I made this journey home from work almost every single day for about 9 months. So I know that it's a area that doesn't have any residential build-up. It's got a few houses, few farmhouses, but mostly it's fields, woodland, and I kind of know where the roads are. So as I'm approaching at this point, this is where I start seeing light emanating from that woodland in front of us, just to the right. Two important things to note is that one, the light that I saw was just white. There wasn't any color. Second, it seemed like a singular light. It wasn't pulsating or flickering or seeming to be making any movement at this time to me. But as I was approaching this tree just on the right, imagine if you had a light on a dimmer switch and you turn it up, it all of a sudden seemed to, again, I don't want to say pulse, but it seemed to fill more of the woodland area. Now I'm going to pause the video in just a moment because I want to kind of take a moment just to recap and explain the thought processes that were going through my head uh, by this point. And there's going to be a lot of people out there that are skeptical and saying, well, why would you be thinking all these thoughts? But actually, you'll realize that it's got nothing to do with the fact that maybe I was considering whether I was seeing a UFO or a UAP or anything like that. It was actually to do with the environment that I was in. I said at first I thought it was maybe somebody out walking a dog with a torch and driving on these narrow country lanes. When somebody's walking on the road, like I am right now, it's quite dangerous, especially if they're not wearing very visible gear at night. And so I wanted to be mindful and slow down a bit, just in case it was somebody walking the dog and they were getting close to the road. But here's the thing, as I got closer, I mentioned that the light started to sort of almost widen and sort of fill a bigger area of the woodland area and sort of, again, I don't want to say glow, but it just, remember that dimmer switch and the light being turned up. So when I saw that happening, I then started to think maybe it was a car approaching me with its high beam and excessive lights on. The road, as it goes around and alongside this woodland area, it does go downwards for quite some distance. And so therefore a car would have been coming up. But again, the mathematics and the angle of that high beam shouldn't have emanated the light that I was seeing from this woodland. I've reflected on that since, but at the time, that's what I thought it was, and that's why I slowed down from roughly about 55 miles an hour to 45 miles an hour, both thinking and worrying, is it somebody out walking their dog, or is that another car approaching me? And that's the thought process at this time. But as we get closer to this woodland area, that's when it all started becoming very strange. Now I'm going to speed the footage up now, one, to give you a little bit more of an impression of what it would have been like going at the speed that I was in the car, not the exact speed. But it was when I got to this point where I'm now driving adjacent to the woodland area. And again, I feel it's important for me to point out that in February, there wasn't this much foliage around, and you could see quite clearly from my vehicle into the woodland. But as you can see right here, right now, it's almost like a wall in front of it. So I feel like I want to just pause this video at a point where I can give you a sense of the woodland itself. So here you go. There's several reasons why I want you to be able to see into the woodland. At its deepest, it's probably roughly about 200 yards deep. And as you can see, if you imagine that all that foliage is kind of gone and the trees are bare, you can see that the trunks, the trees themselves are quite tightly knitted together. And it was as I hit the edge of this woodland and was driving parallel to it that I looked over to the right and finally saw the source of the light. When I say the source of the light, I don't mean I saw a craft. I mean, I saw the source of the light. And again, it was a white light. It was, I guess, circular. Some could say an orb shape. But at this point, I'm then definitely thinking it's someone on a dirt bike. I would say it was about 150 yards deep into the woodland. I already told you that there was plenty of farmhouses and farmland around here, and I'm sure some of those families have got teenage kids, and a lot of them I've seen are, into dirt biking. So I thought maybe it's a teenage kid out at night time being a bit crazy out on a dirt bike, and but I thought it was stationary. And then I started noticing this thing was moving parallel with me, sort of at the same speed. So again, remember, I'm driving at 45 miles an hour. And so I'm starting to think, well, it's definitely not somebody with a torch. Like, they couldn't run through that dense forest, and it definitely couldn't be somebody on a bike. Can you imagine trying to drive a dirt bike through that dense of woodland at about 45 miles an hour? It just isn't a physical thing. And that would have meant also that the dirt bike was, again, it's just not possible. At this point, I'm thinking, hold on, that doesn't make sense. As I said, I'm trying to share with you guys what was going through my head at the time, sort of in that same position in this walkthrough. And the fact that the thing was then moving alongside with me, I'm starting to think, what is this? I'm also reaching inside my logic thinking to think, is it the moon? Um, some sort of low kind of orbit, because the white light was so intense that that's why I thought it may be a possibility. But as this woodland isn't very, doesn't go far along the side of the road, so in a minute we're going to get to an opening where I was starting this video on this location for you. We're going to pass by just where that car was coming from that's almost about to hit me. Um, no, but seriously, where that car was, this sort of route then opens up to just an open field. A lot of the earlier part of this experience, I can give or think of quite a few logical explanations that could have explained what I saw. But when we get to what I saw in the open field area, that's when the number of possibilities, and we're still going to explore what they could be, something that happens towards the end of this experience, which again is very, very difficult to explain. I, at this point, have just got all logical things going on in my head, such as, someone walking their dog or a car coming towards me. Nothing that gave me any reason to think that I should be grabbing a camera or phone. And then, as I said, as it got towards the edge of that woodland, that's where everything began to change. And I started to think to myself, oh my God, what am I seeing here? Now, I'm just going to use a still shot from some of the footage that I filmed earlier, just so that you can see that woodland a little bit better and the field that I'm talking about. We'll go back to the other footage in just a moment. Now, up until this point, all I had been thinking was dirt bike, dirt bike. And as I said to you, as it started moving parallel with me, if it was stationary, it would have meant that the headlamp was face on, because what I was seeing was just this, what I can only describe as a circle or orb of white intense light. So because it was moving along with me, if it had been a bike, I would have been able to see the profile of the bike. I would have been able to see the light and then the profile of the bike and who was riding it. Because I couldn't see that, that's what made me think it's not a dirt bike. And just as I was thinking that, then that's when we got to the field section. So I do have to note at this point that even though I said I could see over this hedge, until we get further down where the hedge then disappears and you just see the open field, I couldn't see the sort of circular orb shape of the light. What I saw, because I'm only seeing just the top part of it, even in my position where I was, the hedge is still cutting off some of my vision. So I'm just going to put up on camera now what the shape was that I was seeing. You can understand where the idea of the moon came from, because this whole section of, the experience, definitely I kept thinking, is that the moon? Is that the moon? But then I had this really strong feeling that it was moving parallel with me. I know that sometimes light can have strange effects and make you think that, but I just had this really strong sense, and it was proven when I got to this open area of the field. What I clearly saw at this point, whilst driving forward and having to look right, was what I can only describe as a white orb, or like a ball, and it was only about a meter or so off the ground. So I had a clear visible shot of this thing, and it was easily moving at the speed that I was, up until a point. You see here in front of us there's a crossroads and there's a road, so the two fields are separated, and this ball sort of went across, so it must have been just slightly higher than the fence, but by the time it's got over to the second field, I am now going in the direction of, continuing in the direction of that vehicle, but the thing speeds ahead at like quite a rapid speed. I wouldn't say like an unbelievable inhuman speed, but certainly crazy to my eye fast. And it gets to that point sort of in the middle of those two trees that you see in the distance. There's the electric telegraph pole, then you've got the tree to the right, and there's actually two trees. There's one closer and a more distant one, and that's the same with the in-between gap in between the two trees. So I'm estimating it was, remember it's nighttime, it was dark, it was the most distant one, because the light seemed to travel quite a distance, so I think it was right between the two far trees. And then what it did in between these two trees, remember I was saying that it was going at quite a rapid speed, it just came to a sudden stop, like an inhuman stop, like somebody had just put pause on a DVD player. It was so sudden. And then what it did then, it's better if I, funny enough, share a video with you. Back in October of 2023, I had shared a trailer video to the Underground Paradox to let the audience know that I was planning on doing an investigation that was going to take place at Hale Beach in Cornwall, based on a sighting and a video of that sighting that had taken place in 2020, I believe. Now, unfortunately, I never actually got to complete the investigation or upload the episode before I had to take my sabbatical and step away from doing YouTube content. What happens in this video, in terms of not everything's exactly the same. For me, as I've already pointed out, the object that I was seeing, I think it was around about just under 2 meters, no more than that. This thing looks a little bit bigger given the distance where the camera was away, but the way that it shoots up like that is exactly what the object that I saw did when it got to that position between the two trees that I pointed out. Later in this video, we're going to digest and break down all the things that I, in the moment and since putting my investigator hat on, have considered what this could be, and we'll go through them and break them down. I just want to say quickly that I know there might be some instant skeptical people out there that think, well, you were investigating this video in October of 2023. I had this sighting in February of 2024. Maybe it put some impression in my head and that I saw this thing and my brain was playing tricks on me. To those people, I would just quickly say, what we would then be considering is that I had a hallucination, and I can tell you quite firmly that, and you know, if you spoke to my friends and family, I don't have hallucinations and I don't suffer with hallucinations, so that quickly dismisses that connection. I've just thought about the fact that that video happened to be very, very similar, not exact, but very similar to what I saw, and the most key part was that bit at the end where it shoots up, because what happened to me in my vehicle, you know, I actually face planted the window trying to follow this thing up as it hit the stratosphere and just disappeared through the clouds. time it is about 10 to 10 at night. It's August the 2nd, so right now it doesn't start getting dark to 9:15, whereas this sighting took place on the 1st of February and it was at 6:45 p.m. at night. But how dark it is now is kind of exactly as it was at that time. It is a bit weird being here, given what I saw here, being here by myself in this dark, but it feels kind of weird. But let's get this walkthrough done, and I'll check back with you in just a moment.
I'm really sad to say that most of my nighttime walkthrough footage didn't come out very well at all, primarily because I mentioned already that it was August and it's a tourist location. It's the summer holidays. There's a lot of people staying around here right now, and it was just, there was endless amount of cars coming through this lane, and I had already had problems throughout the day. You haven't seen it all on camera. You saw one car almost hit me, but there were other drivers that were flashing their lights at me, not liking the fact that I was walking on the road, and I got almost hit by another car when I wasn't filming. So it was really difficult area, and as I said, you know, I had considered initially using a drone to go through here, but because it's got residential areas or private properties, you know, I wouldn't have been able to get the drone low enough, and it just wouldn't have looked right. And so I tried to do the best that I could, but there are still bits of the nighttime footage that I want to highlight to you. So first of all, let's start with the approach and try and make the best out of it we can. And so just to remind you, as I'm approaching, this is where I first see the light and the position that I see the light in. As I am driving closer, I then basically see like a wider light, and then I'm up parallel with the woodland, and this is kind of an example of what I was seeing.
Just going to quickly explain here whilst I'm on location, is as I was coming down the road, after I got past the woodland area where I saw it, it basically was traveling parallel with me at the same sort of similar speed, and I was traveling at about 40-45 miles per hour, at the same speed that you've seen some of the cars on the road going at the moment. And then it went across this field, and my torchlight is kind of similar to the position that it was in, and it was like a orb, as I've already explained. And then it was around this position. Obviously my car was further down the road, but it kind of just shot up into the sky and disappeared. There is a road down here, so I've considered things like whether it was a car traveling up this roadway, casting light over to there, but it wouldn't have explained how the light crossed from one field, as you saw in the daytime footage earlier, into this field over here. But I just thought I'd explain that whilst I'm here on location.
Right, I said we were going to break down all the possibilities of what this could have been that I was seeing. And I said that I was going to talk about what I was thinking about at the time, and then what I've thought about after. All the breakdown thoughts that I've had, I've got to be honest with you, came from after. At the time, all I was thinking was, I can't explain what I'm seeing. I, in all honesty, was in shock. My reaction to what I saw is not what I would have expected it to be. You know, some of you might be asking yourself, why didn't you slow down? Why didn't you stop, get out of the car, get your camera? One, I said this happened all so fast, but two, and again, just being completely and openly honest with you, I actually sped up in my car. Where I am here in this location, I'm about 2 miles away from a dual carriageway where there's street lights and more traffic. You know, I honestly sped up because I was like, I need to get out of here. That was my gut instinct reaction. And again, being completely transparent and honest with you, about halfway on that distance from this location to that dual carriageway, I did slow down and kind of stop and thought to myself, should I turn around and go back? Again, just common sense said to me, no, don't. I knew I hadn't caught it on camera, and the chance of catching anything going back just I didn't think was logical at the time, and so I just wanted to explain that first. So let's break down the possible explanations, and I'm going to deal with the most obvious one to start off with, just because what's on screen right now. Could it have been someone with a torch or a laser? I did give this one some real strong consideration, and again, remember, these points or explanations I thought of in the months after, between February and now in August. So, but considering the laser and the torch idea, I did give it some really strong consideration, and even to the point where I thought, well, if the person or persons was in an easterly direction, that could explain me not seeing the tail of a torch beam or a laser or a spotlight, whatever you want to call it, similar to what we're seeing on screen right now. And the fact of the matter is because I covered some distance, this whole experience from start to finish in distance in terms of the road is roughly about half a mile, which means that person or persons would have had to have been traveling at that sort of same speed across countryside. And I mean, you saw it on the footage earlier that there's no roads there. It'd be them just somehow traveling at that speed across countryside, which is quite a random reach, I think. If you were considering it for an argument the other way, that would seem there's nothing really to back that up. That seems plausible about that. So I did dismiss sort of laser, torch, spotlight, definitely just because of a lot of the factors that I feel confident that I've already discussed. So that one's a cross for me. Then the next one was, again, quite an obvious one. Could it have been a drone? And I did mention earlier that I chose not to use a drone and film in this area because there is private property, residential land, unless it's somebody from one of these houses and locations that was using a drone. Up until a certain point in the experience, I could even, with my knowledge of drones, I mean, I'm not too sure. You guys comment and let me know, but I don't know of any drones that light up like a ball of light at night. Maybe there are some that are used for displays, etc., for commercial business displays. Again, this was an intense white light, and up until a certain point in the experience, I could go with a drone until the very end bit where it kind of shot up into the stratosphere from ground level in a matter of about half a second, just at an impossible speed that I know definitely commercial drones can't do that. So, and again, I've pointed out there's no airfields in this location, so why would they be using a military drone in this location unless it wasn't one of ours? I don't know. You guys let me know what you think about drone. I'm going to leave a question mark next to that one right now. I strongly don't believe it is, but I also don't have any counter evidence or a great deal of enough knowledge about drones to really dismiss it. So you guys, your comments will really help me on this one. The third possible explanation that I'm going to quickly dismiss, but I'm only saying it because I know a lot of people are going to say it. He saw the moon at low level. And I already said in the first half of this experience, which I consider to be the normal, sane part of the experience, and then the second half was a bit very weird and unexplainable. But unless the moon can fly through a field, and I kind of know the difference, I can quickly put a cross over the moon, because to my knowledge, that's not a thing that can happen. Now, the fourth potential explanation that I want to suggest is more aimed at those people that would jump on the social media bandwagon. And it's a phenomena that I had to do a little bit of research to ensure that that really didn't explain what I saw. And that is number 4, ball lightning. I'm sure you guys have seen the videos on social media that show ball lightning sort of floating and moving along a railway track or floating through a building. And I've never given these videos a lot of thought because I instantly kind of assumed that they were CGI, special effects. Does look obvious in that way. So I've never really paid much attention to the phenomena for that reason. But I then thought to myself, well, is there a real thing though? Like, have a look into this, find out more. And scientifically, ball lightning does exist, but certainly not in the way that it's portrayed in a lot of those videos. Um, Ball lightning, I'll try and bring a picture of it up on the screen. It's usually connected to lightning and thunder, and it will be just, close to the streak of lightning, some distance from that, usually at the upper part, and it's related to that sort of strike. It almost appears at the same time as the streak of lightning, and but looks independent from the lightning and looks like a ball of lightning. But there's never been any truly scientific documented cases of ball lightning moving around the sky atmosphere by itself, or certainly down near ground level. That kind of element of the phenomena just does not exist. So for me, what I saw then, I was confident can't be explained away as ball lightning. So do you guys think that it was any of the four possible suggestions that I've put up? I know I certainly don't, but maybe you guys have got some other ideas or thoughts on what it could be. For me, I can't explain it, but please comment.
Okay, that's me pretty much finished up with my walkthroughs. A couple of things I just want to mention because it's the summer holidays here in the UK. A lot more traffic around than usual, certainly more than there was in February. A lot of the time when I'd make this journey home from work, certainly on this stretch of road, it'd be very rare to see other vehicles. But that made that nighttime walkthrough a little bit difficult because of the lights on the car. But hopefully what I got was enough to kind of demonstrate to you guys what it was and how this all unfolded and happened. And it all happened in about less than 35 seconds, I would say. But anyway, please, as I said earlier on, and I've said plenty of times, let me know in comments what you think it might have been. I hope through my narration I've sort of given you an idea of how many things can be eliminated, but really interested to hear what you think. And that's it pretty much for me. So back to you in the studio, G-Star.
Thank you very much, G. Redfords from the Underground Paradox. Look, before we get on to the next sighting and video that happened for me in the early part of July this year, 2024. But before we get on to that, I do just want to say that, regarding that sighting, there's a few things that were really difficult about the whole thing, really. I mentioned in the video that, I don't suffer with hallucinations, etc. And I got home, and the first thing that I did was told my other half about what happened, and, the fact that I was freaked out. I let the experience sit on me for about 24 hours. And then I reached out to Ben from the 401 Files, a good friend of mine, and told him about everything that had happened. And we had a bit of a chat about it. And I've also thought about, like, do I feature it on the channel and talk about it? But the thing was, although I didn't get any pictures in any video, and that's one of the big things that was difficult about it. I felt like I can't explain it, so it absolutely is the right thing for me to do, to share it with you guys. I hope you got a concept enough. It was really difficult filming in that location. I am still working and getting better and better at location filming and working out all the different challenges, but I'm not the best yet. And so that was really difficult for me, and the traffic made it really difficult, so it wasn't easy for me I became very frustrated with the whole process, if I'm going to be honest with you. But I hope you got enough out of it. I don't want to keep saying it, but I'll say it one last time. Please do comment and let me know what your thoughts are. It would really help, because you know, of the two sightings, this next sighting that I'm going to talk about was really interesting, but the one that happened in February just kind of, I don't know, shook me sideways and upwards and downwards quite a few times about a few different things, and still dealing with kind of processing it. And this next sighting, which I want to tell you all about now. So, this next sighting took place on July 2nd, 2024 at 11:35 a.m. European Standard Time. And the reason why that's important is because I wasn't here in the UK when this sighting took place. I was actually on holiday with 8 other people at a location called, an area called Girona, which is in the northern part of Spain. And I was in a small town in that area of Girona called Cologne, actually. And I can't give you the precise location because I was actually staying at a private residence. It's my friend's villa, and so I can't obviously share that exact coordinates, but I've got plenty of footage which I can share, which doesn't reveal any personal details away. The situation was, as I said, I was on holiday with 8 other people, but the majority of them had all left. This was the last day, and the majority of them had either left the day before or the early morning of that day, and so it was just me and my other half that were left in the villa, and they were inside, and I was taking advantage of the last day. It was a gorgeous, beautiful, hot, sunny, warm day, so I was taking advantage of the last bit of sun and laying out by the pool. And I've been doing some filming of that area, which is good to show you right now, because you know it just really shows you what a beautiful day it was. There was barely any clouds around. This video is mostly obviously pointing in one direction behind where I am at this moment filming this. I basically, behind me there's a few clouds, only small clouds, and that will be important when I tell you kind of what happened next after I did this bit of filming. And I was just doing this to show what an awesome view it was from the sort of poolside area by this villa where we were staying, so that I could share it with family back at home. And that's why I was taking this footage. But then what happened after this, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to quickly explain the situation of what was happening. I had done this footage in the filming that you've just watched, and then I decided to lay back down on the sun lounger, catch some sun. I was listening to some music for a Bluetooth speaker, which was Bluetooth to my phone, and that's how I was playing the music. And the phone was next to the Bluetooth speaker, and the Bluetooth speaker was about 2 meters away from where I was laid on the sun lounger. I'm laid on the sun lounger and looking up in the sky, and I noticed this one cloud. And the cloud was about the size of a house, very, very white, but what caught my attention about it, one, there was barely any clouds around in the sky, but two, it seemed really low, like only, I would say, about 300 meters off the ground, like where I was. Now I was up on the side of a sort of mountain range. The sort of villa where I was staying is on a hillside, so I thought maybe that's the reason why. And and then I was looking at this cloud, and I was noticing that from the edges of it, lots of wisps were moving. Now, nothing that at this time I would say was super unusual. It just seemed that the edges of this cloud were moving quite rapidly, and sort of, you know, coming off as almost in little swirls of cloud on the edges. And I was looking at this cloud, and I thought to myself, is that coming more closer to me? Is it coming down? And it was just all very, very strange, and not strange in the way of, you know, anything sort of related to a UAP or a UFO or anything like that. Just strange in just strange behavior, right? So I thought to myself, go back and think about what happened to me in February, all year I've been thinking, if I ever saw anything again, I'm going to make sure I film it. And so I think, right, I'm going to go and grab my camera. So I get up off the sun lounger, go and grab my phone, and then quickly get back to the sun lounger as quick as I can to lay down and start filming this cloud at the best angle, sort of laying down horizontal on the ground. And in the time that I had done that, and that was altogether probably about no more than 10 seconds, the cloud had mostly dissipated. And I started to grab my phone and pull it up from my sort of waistline to start filming and get it in my eye. And as I got to filming this cloud, I thought I saw something in the corner of my eye shoot up from behind it, like, but going further up into the sky, but from the backside of the cloud, if you'd understand what I mean. And so then I tried to quickly move my camera to chase this object. And I'm not going to tell you any more from this point because the rest of it is in the footage. So what I'm going to do, first of all, in typical G-Star Vault style, I'm going to play you the footage completely unedited, nothing done to it, not touched. I mean, sometimes if the audio is particularly bad in other G-Star Vaults, I have like put a little bit of music on top of it or something. But in this situation, like, one thing I've got to say to you first and foremost is that you don't hear me say anything. You just hear, you might possibly hear some of my breathing. And again, you know, harking back to that sighting in February, this is another incident where I was extremely disappointed in how I reacted in the moment, because I wish I'd given a little bit more on the spot narration. But literally, I'm just desperately trying to follow things on this camera, so I'm just completely concentrating. But I will play the video to you first and foremost, completely unedited, so no zoom, no slowing down in the speed that it was filmed, the audio as it was filmed, and then after that I'll obviously start doing some zoom in, some slowing down. I've also got some footage to share where I sent the footage to, again, Ben from the 401 files to share with him and get his thoughts. And he came back with some really interesting footage and some points that he made about looking over the footage that I sent him. So yeah, let's get into this. And then I will also narrate once we've watched the video completely unedited first time through. I'll then do a little bit of narration to walk you through some of the video analysis. Right now, you're probably sitting in one of many categories. Category number one is those that went, what's all the fuss about? Didn't see anything. Category number two is probably people who are going, that was a bird. Have I waited all this time to watch a video to see a bird flying in the sky? And there's might be another category that did see something and are more interested. And there might be another category that thought they saw something fly across the screen towards the end of the footage, which is dark and black and is likely an insect. But let's start breaking some of these down. Now, just before we do start breaking it down, I do want to just clarify something that I probably didn't explain in the best possible way earlier. But before I got the camera started and I had it sort of around my waistline and was just bringing it up, I saw something fly away higher from the other side of the cloud. And remember, this footage is
47 seconds long, and 10 seconds before that, or roughly that time frame, the time it took me to get from the sun lounger to my phone and back to the sun lounger, this cloud that you see dissipating was fully formed. It was a full-on cloud. I guess what I'm trying to get at is whether you've seen anything in the footage or think it's something very explainable. The fact that this cloud, within the period of a minute, I know clouds can dissolve, but within a minute, that a fully formed large cloud, that's a bit strange in itself. I don't think it's absolutely impossible, but it is a bit unusual and also thought-provoking. But let's deal with those that are in the category that think that what they saw on the video footage was a bird. And as we get into that, that'll help those of you who are yet to see anything on the footage. Now, the reason why I start with the suggestion that it's a bird is because let me explain first of all that what I did following filming this footage is I ran inside the villa to my other half and said, I've just seen or had a really weird experience outside, and look, I've just caught this footage. They could see the object on the footage as well, but I was, climatizing to the light, and then I was looking at it and I was thinking, is that a bird? And when I got back home and started looking at the footage, I thought maybe that is just a bird. But then as I started to do some video analysis, which I'm going to share with you now, that hopefully will do the same as it's done to me and kind of change my mind about that theory. On top of that, where you see this thing emerge in the first instance is basically where the direction of the thing that I saw would likely have been. This first bit of analysis that I've started slowing down the footage and zooming on areas. First bit is the section of footage that I quickly pulled together to send to Ben over on the 401 files. So that's what exactly I sent to him. Then I'm hopefully going to be able to share some scrubbing with you, because that's quite important, because as I was going through the footage and being able to scrub it and take it forward and backward, the way that this thing emerges into that area of sky and some of the movement that it makes just kind of takes me away from the explanation that what we're seeing is a bird. So that's the footage that I sent to Ben along with the unedited version, and we'll talk about that more in a minute, but this is what he sent back to me. These are the messages that I got back from Ben after he had been doing his analysis of the footage, and you know what, I really appreciated him doing that, because what it did was open my mind. I just at this point of my analysis just been concentrating on that one area that you see on the screen now. I hadn't been thinking about what was on the rest of the footage, and Ben's analysis really opened me up to that. However, what I will say is that this footage is plagued with a lot of insects on it as well. You can see them flying around black, and in this case, the one by the shower head there, I also think that's an insect. So far, you will have seen me say to Ben in the footage that I shared with him that I'm quite confident it's not a satellite, because you see the thing shoot down and change direction quite rapidly, and you just wouldn't get that with a satellite. And then also Ben in his messages said that he doesn't think it's a drone because you can see it all over the place. Now, although some of what I think Ben has highlighted is like the insects, and again I said that this footage is played with them from start to finish, even though it's only 47 seconds long. And right now I don't want to be jumping too far forward and getting too heavily into discussing or disproving what it can and can't be, until I've told you that throughout my further video analysis, after this back and forth with Ben, I have discovered two other sections of the footage where there is something of interest which I don't feel falls into that insect category. And again, if you go back and watch the unedited, unfiltered, uncut footage, you do see all those kind of insects flying about. But that, I do not believe, is what I'm about to highlight to you now, and I'd prefer to show them to you first, and then we'll discuss what it can and can't be. The next strange anomaly that I want to point out to you on this footage actually happens in the last few seconds of the footage, and you have to really slow the footage down to even be able to see it. But it is strange. Here it is, check it out. Just don't tell me it's a bird. The third anomaly is at the tail end of the footage that I originally sent to Ben, and as I was going back and looking through it, in the last sort of 2 seconds of that footage, something happens, and I've looked at it multiple times, and every time it's just blowing my mind. Let me know what you think. Here it is. Now, I hope you're seeing the object coming from the left hand side of the screen to the right hand side of the screen. What I want to do now is I want to play you some footage where I'm still slowing it down as much as I can, zooming it in areas, but what I'm now showing you is the footage in linear order, because what I've realized is that there is an object or something that I can't explain on the screen that comes in from the right hand side of the skyline. I lose sight of it as it's sort of in the middle of the skyline, and then something of a similar size and shape comes from the left hand side of the skyline right the way across to the right, really, really fast. Now, either it's the same object or it's possibly a couple of objects. Like, there's multiple objects, like Ben was pointing towards the fact that he was seeing things all over the place. So before we get into explaining all the things that it could possibly be, some we've already discussed, I just want to point out three things that I think is particularly good about this footage. And one is the fact that lens flare is present in the footage. That lens flare sort of gives you an indication that I'm not moving the camera around too much. The lens flare does move from time to time, but not so much. And also, a lot of the objects that we've highlighted and pointed out are moving independently of that lens flare. Ergo, we're not seeing these objects moving because of the movement of my camera. The second good thing is the presence of insects all over the footage. Because if you're skeptical, quite logical, you've got to kind of align with me a little bit that I can recognize the difference between those objects on this footage that are insects versus what I've highlighted. Anomaly number one, I saw with my naked eye, not just with the camera. And you can go back and watch the original unedited, unfiltered, no zoom, no messing around with the speed. Go and watch it, and you still see all of these things without using zoom or magnifying them or slowing them down. And although anomaly free, I could see a strong argument for it being an insect because of the way it moves so fast. But again, that a lot of the footage that we've looked through isn't particularly zoomed. It's just cropped and taken out of that part of the skyline. So again, but anomaly number one, I definitely know because I saw it with my naked eye. Now that brings me nicely on to the third reason why the footage is so good. And that is because usually when I'm reviewing footage on G-Star Vaults, it's somebody else's footage. So I was never there in that moment. You know, I wasn't present, I didn't experience it, so I can only talk about it from one angle. Whereas I was here in this moment, saw things both with the camera and with my naked eye. And so that makes this analysis quite unique, I feel. So let's break this down. What could it or could it not be? So first and foremost, satellite. I think I've already given some really good reasoning why this isn't a satellite. Hopefully you're as lucky as me, but I have seen satellites in the skyline, both at nighttime and during the day. And so I know what they look like. And the way that some of these objects on this footage act, it is not a satellite. I do agree with a comment that Ben has made that this being a drone, unless it's a military drone, that's the only thing I could possibly consider that's some tech that we don't really know or understand. I think we've pretty much covered insect. You know, guys, just understand that there's plenty of activity on this footage that I can easily say, no, that's probably an insect. And again, anomaly one, I saw it with my naked eye. I don't see insects like that. That's not how it works. Objects that I'm seeing, I definitely see a sense of distance to them. And I was trying to point out to you earlier that the footage is cropped but not zoomed. So, you know, there's a lot of it where I just wasn't zooming it in. So those objects are quite of a size, if that makes sense. One thing you need to know is that after looking at the footage in the moment inside the villa, and then I came back out again, and I stood in the same area, and I wasn't hoping or expecting to see anything again. What I was looking for was explanations in the environment. I'll give you an example. I know at this destination that Girona Airport is quite near this location, and there's also Barcelona Airport, which if in a car would take you 50 minutes drive from this location to get to. So this airspace that this footage is filmed in, there is quite a lot of planes that go to and fro, both from Girona and Barcelona. And the great thing was that I was able to stand there and witness a lot of them and see what kind of height they were flying at, a lot lower level than this object that I saw. And you can quite clearly make out that they're aeroplanes. And again, the way that this moves, I think you can discount aeroplane. Other things that I was looking for was to, you know, observe the birds. Because again, I thought maybe it was a bird that I caught. There were birds in the environment and around in the area. They certainly weren't flying at the height that these were. Now, that's not to say that a different species of bird was flying higher than, and a much higher altitude than the ones that I was witnessing. But again, if it's a bird which, the underside can often get caught on cameras and look like white objects in the sky, but it certainly doesn't pulse and glow. Like, this thing comes in and gives off quite a strong extra light, and I just don't think that that's something that can be achieved by a bird. And just again, some of the maneuverability of this thing doesn't look like a bird. And I'd be interested to see what you guys think. Well, that's it from me, but all that I want to lastly say about this second sighting is that probably what resonates most with me is what happened before I switched the camera on, because what that cloud was doing and how it felt like it was coming down towards me, how it was acting, was very strange, and that's what got me to picking up the camera anyway. But also some of these objects and anomalies I saw with my naked eye. But let me know what you think. All comments welcome, as long as they're rational. And before I check off, I just want to again say thank you to Ben for his participation and discussing these sightings with me. I hope you've enjoyed this video. I'm so sorry it's so long, but I've been waiting a long time for something like this to happen to me, and I just wanted to explain it thoroughly and make sure no detail was missed. But here's the great thing, if you haven't heard already, G-Star Vault is about to go live and be doing 3 podcasts a month on a Sunday night. Keep an eye on our community thread about when that's going to launch, and maybe when we start doing those lives we can discuss this footage in a little bit more detail. That's an exciting development for G-Star Vault. For now, I just want to say thank you for watching. I know this was a long video, but really appreciate it. And what I really ask is if you could please share this video, because sharing is caring, and we'd really appreciate it. But for now, thank you for tuning in. I hope you've enjoyed this episode of The Underground Paradox. If you have, please do give this video a like. I'll see you next time here, where I'll continue the investigations of Devon and Cornwall, Dartmoor and Bodmin Moor. See you soon.